Hi, everybody. It's Thursday session. We're moving into our audio production unit, and a lot of students are just finishing up the unit on ethics and culture in media, sensitivity, sexism, racism, homophobia, and also with referencing materials, copyright laws, that sort of thing. Now, I did have two different forks in the road for that unit there. If you were a 20 student, you were doing assignments, I believe 9 and 10, and if you were a 30 student, you were doing assignments 11 and 12. So the road kind of forks there before we go back together for our sound unit. So this is where we are in the course. We're starting to move into our first actual production. And in doing that, we need to look at some of the pre-production tasks that, that any good media developer will do before they actually get to the point of recording, or the production middle phase, where you are recording either sound, or you're recording sound and video, or you're building, you're on set, you're moving to locations and things like that. The actual getting the quote film in the can, which is the step before you have to edit everything together. But it becomes very, very difficult and costs money and time and effort if you don't have a good solid plan before you get to the production stage. So this is actually going to be our first opportunity where we're moving through, a more formal pre-production phase before we build something. I know that, some people think it's not the most exciting thing in the world. It does involve some writing, it does involve some planning. You're right, it's probably not as exciting as just getting the mic in front of you and doing a podcast or a radio commercial, or getting a camera up and filming something. But it is just a part of the process, and the professionals in industry wouldn't do it if it didn't make sense. And at the end of the day, if you plan well, you will produce well. And that doesn't mean that things don't change from the planning stage or the pre-production phase to the production phase. No project in the history of projects has ever gone exactly to plan. So it doesn't mean that your plans can't change along the way. Doesn't mean that your script can't change, or that the idea, you were going to shoot from this angle, but you decided to go from a different angle or something like that. It doesn't mean that those changes can't be made. It just means that you need to have a decent plan in place. Okay, it's okay to change your plan. It's not okay to not have a plan, because if you just go in there and throw stuff against the wall, it's going to be terrible. And I've been teaching communications media long enough to see it. And it's quite obvious when somebody's got a plan, even if the plan has changed. It's quite obvious when I get final products, what has been prepared for and planned ahead of time versus, oh, I forgot and I just rushed it and I threw something together. It's clear as day. And it doesn't take a trained ear, it doesn't take an expert to see this. If I showed you 5 student projects and said 2 of these had a script and a treatment and had some pre-planning, and 3 of these had that, and 2 of these had none of that, they just went out and tried to make their radio commercial, every single one of you would be able to pick out the 2 that there was no planning in. So it's not that only an expert can see this, and frankly, I don't consider myself an expert, but it's not that difficult to point out. Okay? And you'd see it on TV as well. You probably see it on YouTube videos all the time. There's things that are scripted and obviously very well prepared for, and then there's things that are just kind of off the cuff and whatnot. And you can always tell the difference between them. And in general, depending on what you're actually going for, in general, the ones that are planned for, no matter what media it is, if you're doing radio, if you're doing a website, if you're doing TV, if you're doing film, if you're doing interactive media or YouTube or something like that, you can always tell if somebody has put some effort into, analyzing the target audience and deciding what they want to communicate about and what sort of reaction they want to elicit from the audience, and how they're going to use multimedia at their disposal in order to evoke a certain response or a certain emotion, basically to get your target audience to do or feel what you want them to do or feel. And pre-planning is a big part of that. So I'm just going to very briefly touch on the sort of pre-planning things that we need to undertake for this audio production assignment to be effective. And we need to find a balancing point between what's too much planning and what's not enough planning. And there is a balancing point. You don't want to plan things so carefully and so rigidly that you have no flexibility to move in the production stage. And you also don't want to completely underplan so you get to the production stage and say, oh, why didn't I think about that? Why didn't I do this? And I'll just give you an example from sort of maybe an on location filming. let's say that you've got a plan to go out to a certain area and it's expensive. You've got to rent equipment. You've got to have transportation. If you've got actors on and crew on scene, you've got to pay for them. You've got to manage it. It's a big project once you get sort of outside of the personal media development. But what if you had not, in your pre-planning phase, had it on there that you need to book and get permission from the city to shoot in the city square or wherever it is you wanted to shoot? That would be something that if you showed up to shoot that day with your crew and your equipment and your cast and everybody ready to go, and then a city official comes out and says, you can't be here. This is a public space. You can't be filming in here, and they kick you out, and they're right to do so. All that money, all that planning is to waste. And really the only reason it goes to waste is because you didn't have a location, you didn't have it in your preparation or your pre-production phase that you had to scout all the locations and that you had to get approval for all the locations and you had to, pay the permits or do whatever you have to do to make sure that when we get there with all this stuff that we can actually shoot. And you can apply that to any single piece of the production plot process. And you can use the exact same answer or the exact same situation. Well, what if you hadn't sent out a form or managed some camera equipment that you needed to rent for the day? So everybody gets on site, the permit for the city's there, it's great, you're allowed to be here, we're ready to shoot. We don't have any cameras because somebody didn't make a production schedule that says we need this camera and this setup and these lights and all this stuff that we need in order to make it work. Because it wasn't planned for, it basically ruined the day. You're a day behind. You've also paid a bunch of money to a bunch of people to do nothing and paid for a permit to a city that you may not be able to get again for that location and got nothing out of it. So you see, I mean, it's pretty logical when you think about it. Any one of these things can derail a production and set you back. So if you have multiple things like this happening, you're out of luck. It's going to cost you too much money, it's going to cost you too much time, and it's going to frustrate everybody around you. You have to plan, and things will go wrong. You will plan a location, and you will get permission to shoot, and then you will get there with your friends and your cast and get ready to shoot, and somebody will come out and say, no, you're not allowed to shoot here. And you'll say, yeah, I called, I'm allowed to shoot here, and blah, 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 blah. Stuff happens, and you can't control that. But you did what was within your power to make sure that you had everything planned out for that day. So I guess the message is, nothing goes as planned 100%, but if you don't have a plan, you're guaranteed to fail. Okay, so that being said, let's just look at what is the expectation for production in the audio section. And navigating to it here. Okay, so the first assignment that we've got is essentially creating some theme music. So we're going to do this kind of in little chunks, and then as we move forward, you're going to make a larger production, which means that the pre-production planning needs to be more significant. Just starting out on these little, learning how to import and edit sound clips and whatnot, that's not an entire project. That's just an assignment. That's just a little chunk to get the technical skills in order. So it's when we get to the, sort of larger, we're going to use everything we know to make an actual piece of media, like a product. That's when it becomes very important that we get a little bit more definite about our pre-production steps. So there is lots of information here on Soundation, which is a software that's easy to use. It's free. You can use it to do all your recording and mixing and editing and whatnot. And there's a lot of there's these tutorial videos that should take you through screen by screen. But I did say before that you got to use what works best for you. Some of you will have some experience with recording, and I know some of you do, because I've seen it in your blogs already. And some people will have never done it before, at least in a semi-professional planned project. So I understand both sides of that. And if you have something that you're comfortable with, and if you have some equipment, microphones, recorders, things like that, that you are comfortable with and that you can produce high quality work with, by all means use them. If you're on the other end, and I've never done this before, and I'm basically going to be trying to do this with my smartphone and this little free piece of software I put on my computer, that's fine too. You can produce wonderful media with what you have. And sure, I'm sort of making the assumption that if you're in a communication media class, that you probably have access to some sort of smartphone or tablet where there's a decent camera for recording or shooting, and probably not a bad sort of internal mic that you can use to record sound. If you are really struggling to find something like that, you probably should be in touch with me so that we can try and work something out. I don't know that our school has a whole lot of extra, equipment, if any, that can be lent out. But if that expectation that you've got some sort of access to equipment that will work, that's something we should probably know sooner than later. Excuse me. So that being said, I can't really put up a tutorial for 1,000 different ways to record and edit. So I kind of picked one, and if this one isn't the one you're using, I can help you try to figure out what you need to do in your piece of software, or you can Google it, which is really what you should be doing ahead of, if you're going to use a different piece of software, you should probably, find a couple of YouTube videos and this is how we do it. This is how you learn how to do it. And frankly, that's how I learned how to do things too. No single person can know every piece of audio editing software and every microphone and every setup for every Pro Tools and things like that. I mean, no matter how much you know, if it's something new, you're going to have to go and find out how to use it. And most people nowadays go to YouTube. If I need to, it doesn't matter, it's not related to communications media. I needed to change power window actuator in my car the other day, something I've never done before, something I have no idea how to do, but I'm too cheap to get a mechanic to do it. So basically I ordered a part from Amazon and watched 2 YouTube videos and was successfully able to replace my power window actuator. And, I'm not a handy person, so if I can use a YouTube video and some external information in order to figure out how to do something highly technical, you can too. So, I encourage you to do that. I just, I caution you, if you call me and say, I am using this app to do this and it's not working and I don't know how to make it work, my answer is not going to be, oh, you have to click this and do this and do this, because I probably don't know either. My answer will be, okay, let's try and figure it out together. And I'm committed to doing that with you. I'd love to help you out. Just be aware that there's probably going to be a little back and forth and a little bit of us researching and whatnot. The general idea between, with audio editing and having different sound clips and then combining them together so that, maybe you have fading between one clip and another clip, or maybe you have to have 2 clips playing at the same time and sort of stacking them up. The general ideas behind what you need to do with regard to editing and changing the length of a clip or moving the clip around or changing the timing, no matter what piece of software you're using, the ideas and the general navigation on that, particularly if you're using a computer and you're able to have a mouse and a screen, they're generally pretty similar. So what I would recommend, actually strongly recommend, as in do it, is even if you don't plan on using Soundation, you have to watch all of these videos, which is not a huge undertaking because there are, 5 of them, 4 of them, and they're about 3 minutes long. So I'm basically telling you, you need to take 12 minutes to watch these videos and either have Soundation downloaded and installed ahead of time, or watch the videos and then make a decision. That looked reasonably simple. I think I'm going to use that. Or I've used this software before and this recording, this microphone or this phone or whatever to record before, and I know what I'm doing and I have some experience and I can make it sound good and achieve, the quality that I need. Great, go for it. I'm not going to slow you down. I'm not going to force you to use something that is not going to be as good for you as what you've already been using. So, you can either play along with the videos with Soundation already open. You can watch the videos and then decide, yeah, I think that's going to work. I'll go download it and I'll start working. Or you can decide, no, that's not going to work as well for me for whatever reason. I'm going to use what I already used, or I'm going to try and find something that's going to work better for me because I only have access to a phone or something like that. So it's flexible, but our timelines are short enough that you really need to, you got to get on it, and then you've got to reach out to me, or at least I highly recommend that you reach out to me if you have any issues or any problems or anything like that, so that I can help you. Okay, so the intro stuff is kind of more technically based, and click here, do this, drag that, and it just to give you some experience with the program and what you're doing essentially when you're making sound clips and editing sound clips. And that leads into the assignment, which is going to be to create your own theme music. And I notice instantly as I look at my screen, it says video is unavailable. It's frustrated me a bit to this date because the teacher that originally made this course. Unfortunately, I seem to not have access because they've made some videos private. So I'm still looking into that. So if you see that in the assignment, that will be fixed ASAP. But the Soundation here is going to be recommended, strongly recommended. And there's an account-based system with it. So that kind of helps us out in that we're all using, we'd be using a web-based system. There'd be access to, easier access for help. And also, some sort of ability to link to things instead of having to download big media files and then try to upload them into Blackboard. Now, I will say this, if you don't want to use Soundation, it's just not working for you, or you like something else better, by all means, I'm perfectly okay with you handing in a product, a WAV file, a MIDI file, MP4, or when we get into, media units, whatever video files we have. I'm okay with that, but you do need to realize that the more complex the media, the larger the files are. So if you're handing in a half-hour podcast as an MP3, it's probably not bad. It might be 100 megabytes, which most people can handle downloading and re-uploading relatively easily. But if you were to hand me in 35 minutes of video, high def 1080p video, or even 4K, which we might as well not even bother because I don't have the technology to watch it anyway. But anyway, the point being, raw files from a very high definition source of video, we're talking gigabytes and gigabytes of data. It's not the sort of thing that you would just zip up and hand in online or email me or anything like that. It just gets to the point where the media files are so large that the best way that we can handle it is to have it stored in the cloud somewhere, and then me having a link to it so that I can sort of stream it instead of having to download it. And if we run into issues with that, they'll be easily solved. But this is why there's going to be a recommendation as we move forward, that we handle as much of this as we can in a web-based environment, where we don't run into the possibility of losing files, of corrupting files, of downloading and not being able to run files, of having a successful download but an unsuccessful zip and then upload to the website kind of problem. It can save us some stress. So we'll do what we need to do. We'll try to work both as a team and with your individual preferences to try to make it as easy as we can. But just keep in mind that as we move along and get into video, our files are going to get very, very large very quickly, and we've got to kind of prepare for that. All right, so into assignment 13. I'm not going to go into it too much. I basically want you to learn a little bit about the technical specifics of working with sound clips and editing and whatnot before we get into planning a full project. So I don't think I want to go too far down the pre-production road today. And I know it's kind of backwards because we're editing stuff, which is typically post-production, editing stuff and learning how to edit stuff before we do production, before we do pre-planning. So we're basically doing it backwards. But I'm kind of a tinkerer. So if I'm going to learn how to build a good, strong audio product, I'm probably going to tinker around with some smaller sound files and, okay, this is how I can record it. Okay, this is how I can get it into the program. Okay, this is how I can cut the clip off and split it up into 3 different media clips. Okay, this is how I can get 2 things going at once. This is how I can have the right speaker doing this and the left speaker doing this and the surround sound speaker doing that, or the center channel doing that. I like to play with those little skills, those technical skills, before I even worry about, okay, now I need to plan. I'm going to make a 30-second commercial. What is my commercial going to be on? Who is my target audience? How am I going to, where am I going to do it? What equipment am I going to use? What is my script going to look like? What sound effects am I going to need? See, these are things that are pre-production, but I don't even, as an amateur producer, I don't even want to think about all of those things until I play around a little bit with basic sound editing. So that's what I think assignment 13 is intended to do. And after we're a little bit more comfortable playing around with these files and whatnot, then we're gonna go to a slightly larger project, which will encompass some planning, not an abundance of planning. We don't have that sort of time in this class, but it was some planning, a definite production phase, and then a definite post-production phase where you're doing all your editing and testing prior to submitting sort of something that's creative in your own. So that's where I want to leave it today. I haven't had great attendance for these live sessions, and that's okay. I mean, the courses are intended to be designed, at least this one is for sure, to be completed independently if you so choose. All of the critical information is there. Anything that isn't there, you can either easily research and determine yourself, or you can certainly reach out to me and I can help support you in any way that I can. But I want to make sure that the time that we've got for these sort of interactive live sessions is valuable. So there's a couple ideas been throwing around, and I ran a couple of these by one of the students who was in the live session today, and just asked, would the time that I've got scheduled twice weekly for these live sessions, would it make more sense for me to break it up instead of an hour, break it up into maybe 20-minute chunks or 30-minute chunks, and then just make it an option for students to sign up for one-on-one help. And the reason I thought that might be a better idea is I feel like you'd be a little bit more inclined to sign up for one if you knew it was just the two of us, and if you knew we would be talking specifically about your project or your assignment. So it's very targeted. And if you show up for a 1-hour session and I'm talking about a project or an assignment that you're not on yet, is it kind of wasted time and things like that? So I'm open to suggestion. I am throwing it out there for you. And the student and I tossed it around a little bit, and I asked point blank, if I sent out a little questionnaire, just brief, like one, 2 questions maybe, about what your preference would be with regard to these live sessions. Do you think that people would see that in the announcements and actually fill it in? And that student thought that, yeah, that's probably pretty reasonable. So I think I'll do that. So please do keep checking the announcements. And if we decide that we want to go a slightly different route with these planned live sessions, they're supposed to be interactive sessions. But again, if I've got 2 people or 1 person out of 19 showing up, then maybe it's time for me to throw it back to you and say, hey, what's going to be valuable for you? Because I want to be able to support you, but I also want you to have some power in this decision. So look for that, or feel free to email me if you've got a strong opinion on that. I'm willing to work with you, and we'll kind of just keep bumping along in this course. I don't want to ring any panic bells, but I've called some parents and I've sent some messages out, and I've been in contact with some students, and it's not supposed to be a scary message, but sometimes the message has been, we're a third of the way through the course and I haven't received any projects yet. We haven't even really done any of the big stuff yet. So you're going to need to make some decisions very quickly if you're a student who's, significantly behind our course calendar. You're probably going to have to make some decisions here pretty quickly on what you're willing and able to do moving forward. And my promise to you is that I'll just support you the best I can in you meeting your goals, sort of whatever form that takes. But you certainly, if you're not getting work done, or if you're struggling to look at the materials, or if there's certain things that you don't understand, even though you've gone through the materials, you're going to have to make some decisions very quickly about how you want to proceed. And then let me know, reach out to me, and let me do my best to give you good advice, or to help you, or to help you set yourself up in a way that will be successful. And I think in general, if you can get there, staying current with that course calendar will make sure that you've got enough time to complete the projects to a high quality to a high standard of quality, and also so that you're not completely overwhelmed at the end of the quarter, catching up on a bunch of late assignments and things like that. I don't want students to feel that stressed in the last week of a quarter. So if we can avoid that, that'd be great. All right, so thank you for your time. Appreciate it. And as always, if there's anything I can do for you, please reach out to me via email, or if you have new live sessions. I'd love to see you. And take care. Let me know how I can help. Thanks.